Okay, so scattering objects. There's multiple ways that you can actually do this in Blender. I'm going to show you a very quick way that you can set it up. I have this scene here. This is for the scenes that I set up to sort of showcase some of the assets, right? So we have this sort of like animation into these, right? And I have like multiple assets, multiple buildings that we sort of created in order for us to sort of like showcase it, right? And I have some of the terrain in here, but you can see here at the bottom all these little like rocks and stuff that is there. And the reason why I did that is because just on this particular shots, the terrain itself was sort of just a little bit empty, and so I decided to add and scatter some of the rocks that we have in order to bring a little bit of contrast to the ground itself, even though it's not the most important thing. The building it is, but it sort of helps a little bit to break out the flatness of the terrain. And so I have a very simple setup here for this. And the way I did, real quick, the way I did the camera was just I have an empty right in the center of the building, and I have the empty. You can see that it's animated, and so I parented the camera. So if I select the camera here, you can see that the camera is parented to the empty, right? So whatever the empty does um, in terms of movement, um, the camera will always follow, right? And so here, let me see this here. So if I move the empty, the camera is always going to move. But also, if I go to the camera and I go to constraints, I have a track to the empty constraint. So if you go to add object constraint, you can find it here, track 2 on the tracking. And what that does is it doesn't matter where I move the camera, right? It's always going to be pointing and looking to the object that I have in the track 2. In this case, also the empty, right? So I have all these different things that I can set up. I don't think in this particular case, I don't think the track 2 is super important, because if I parent the camera to the empty and I just rotate the empty, the camera will fall in that certain direction. But I think originally I wanted to animate the camera rotating, so I added the track 2. But in this case, at the end, I decided not to actually have the animation on the camera, just to have the animation on the empty. Just a little bit easier for me to sort of visualize this and deal with it. But that's sort of the general setup that I have, and I just set it up this way um, because I could just plant the building in the center, and I already have the animation already set up, and it's just a matter of rendering the animation itself, not doing anything else, right? So let's talk about the ground and the scatter here system. Now I have open here, this is your rocks sort of file, right? You have the textures for the terrains. You have all these rocks as well as part of your kit. And so I copy these little rocks here that we have, sort of put them on a new file just so we can deal with this separately. But this is a very simple setup. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to select the rocks, select my plane or your terrain that you want to scatter the rocks into, and I'm going to search for scatter. I'm going to go to scatter objects. So once I do that, I'm going to, with my mouse, left click, and I'm pressing left click. You could do this with your Wacom as well if you feel more comfortable, right? And I'm just going to add whatever shape I want. And you can see all the blue cubes is the actual rocks, right? So whatever it is that you want to, or the areas that you want to have rocks into, you just paint on top. You can let go of the mouse as well and continue painting. Once you're done, you can just press enter. So we enter, now I have that. And so again, this is a very quick way that you can do this, right? And you can also, what I like to do if I really want a nicer sort of setup, once I do this, this gives me like a general sense of the scattering, and then I can come in and start duplicating, and then manually just start adding certain rocks into the actual terrain. Just manually do a few of them in there, right? And so, but I would do that only. I didn't do it for this particular scene, right? And you can see the lines where I sort of scatter the objects. But this is a very easy way that you can add this. And you could do this not just with rocks, you could do it with grass or trees and plants and stuff like that, right? Well, I hope that helps, and I'll see you guys in the next one.